Chapter 10 Thorolf and Finmark. In the winter, Thorolf took his way up to the fields with a large force of not less than 90 men. Whereas before it had been the wont of the king's stewards to have 30 men, and sometimes fewer. He took with him plenty of wares for trading. Once he appointed a meeting with the Finns, took of them the tribute, and held a fair with them. All was managed with goodwill and friendship, though not without fear on the Finn side. Far and wide about Finmark did he travel. But when he reached the fells eastward, he heard that the Kylfings were come from the east and were there for trading with the Finns. But in some places for plunder also Thorolf set Finns to spy out the movements of the Kylfings, and he followed after to search for them, and came upon 30 men in one den, all of whom he slew, letting none escape. Afterwards he found together 15 or 20, and all they slew near upon 100, and took immense booty, and returned in the spring after doing this. Thorolf then went to his estates at Sandnes, and remained there through the spring. He had a long ship built large, and with a dragon's head, fitted out in the best style. This he took with him from the north. Thorolf gathered great stores of what there was in Hildirida, employing his men after the herrings and in other fishing. Seal hunting there was too in abundance, and egg gathering, and all such provision he had brought to him. Never had he fewer freedmen about his home than 100. He was open-handed and liberal, and readily made friends with the great and with all that were near him. A mighty man he became, and he bestowed much care on his ships, equipment, and weapons. Chapter 11. The King feasts with Thorolf. King Harald went that summer to Helgoland, and banquets were made ready against his coming, both where his estates were. And also by barons and powerful landowners, Thorolf prepared a banquet for the king at great cost. It was fixed for when the king should come there. To this he bade a numerous company, the best men that could be found. The king had about 300 men with him when he came to the banquet, but Thorolf had 500 present. Thorolf had caused a large granary to be fitted up where the drinking should be, for there was no hall large enough to contain all that multitude, and all around the building shields were hung. The king sate in the high seat, but when the foremost bench was filled, then the king looked round, and he turned red, but spoke not, and men thought they could see he was angry. The banquet was magnificent, and all the viands of the best. The king, however, was gloomy. He remained there 3 nights as had been intended. On the day when the king was to leave, Thorolf went to him, and offered that they should go together down to the strand. The king did so, and there, moored off the land, floated that dragon ship which Thorolf had built, with tent and tackling complete. Thorolf gave the ship to the king, and prayed the king to believe that he had gathered such numbers for this end, to show the king honor, and not to enter into rivalry with him. The king took Thorolf's words well, and then became merry and cheerful. Many added their good words, saying, as was true, that the banquet was most splendid, and the farewell escort magnificent, and that the king gained much strength by such men. Then they parted with much affection. The king went northwards through Hildirida as he had purposed, and returned south as summer wore on. He went to yet other banquets there that were prepared for him. Hildirida's sons went to the king and bade him to a 3 nights banquet. The king accepted their bidding and fixed when he would come. So at the appointed time he and his train came thither. The company was not numerous, but the feast went off very well, and the king was quite cheerful. Herrick entered into talk with the king, and their talk turned on this, that he asked about the king's journeys in those parts during the summer. The king answered his questions, and said that all had received him well, each after his means. Great will have been the difference, said Herrick, and at Torga the company at the banquet will have been the most numerous. The king said that it was so. Herrick said, that was to be looked for, because on that banquet most was spent, and thou O king, hadst great luck in matters so turning out that thy life was not endangered, the end was as was likely. Thou wert very wise and very fortunate, for thou at once suspectedst all was not for good on seeing the numerous company there gathered. But, as I am told, thou madest all thy men remain armed constantly, and keep watch and ward night and day. The king looked at him and said, Why speakest thou thus, Herrick? What canst thou tell of this? Herrick answered. May I speak with permission what I please? Speak, said the king. This I judge, said Herrick, that thou wouldst not deem it to be well if thou, O king, heardest everyone's words, what men say when speaking their minds freely at home, how they think that it is a tyranny thou exercisest over all people. But the plain truth is, O king, that to rise against thee the people lack nothing but boldness and a leader. Nor is it wonderful in a man like Thorolf that he thinks himself above everyone. He wants not for strength and comeliness, he keeps a guard round him like a king. He has wealth in plenty, even though he had but what is truly his. But besides that he holds others' property equally at his disposal with his own, thou, too, hast bestowed on him large grants, and he had now made all ready to repay them with ill, for this is the truth that I tell thee. When it was learned that thou wert coming north to Hildirida with no more force than 300 men, the counsel of people here was that an army should assemble and take thy life, O king, and the lives of all thy force, and Thorolf was head of these councils, and it was offered him that he should be king over the Hildiranders and Namdale's men. Then he went in and out of each firth and round all the islands, and got together every man he could find and every weapon, and it was no secret that this army was to muster for battle against King Harold. But the truth is, O king, that though thou hadst somewhat less force than those who met thee, yet the farmer folk took flight when they saw thy fleet. And this counsel was adopted to meet thee with friendly show and bid thee to a banquet. But it was intended, when thou wert well drunk and lying asleep, to attack thee with fire and weapon. And here is a proof whether I am rightly informed. You were led into a granary because Thorolf was loth to burn up his new and beautiful hall. And a further proof is that every room was full of weapons and armor, but when all their devices against thee miscarried, then they chose the best course they could. They hushed up their former purpose. And I doubt not that all may deny this counsel, because few, methinks, know themselves guiltless were the truth to come out. Now this is my counsel, O king, that thou keep Thorolf near thee, and let him be in thy guard and bear thy standard, and be in the forecastle of thy ship. For this duty no man is fitter, or if thou wilt have him to be a baron, then give him a grant southwards in the firths where are all his family. Thou mayest then keep an eye on him, that he make not himself too great for thee. But the business here in Hildirida put thou into the hands of men who are moderate and will serve thee faithfully, and have kinsfolk here, men whose relatives have had the same work here before. We 2 brothers are ready and willing for such service as thou wilt use us in. Our father long had the king's business here, and it prospered in his hands. It is difficult, O king, to place men as managers here, because thou wilt seldom come hither thyself. The strength of the land is too little to need thy coming with an army. Yet thou must not come hither again with few followers. There are here many disloyal people. The king was